Skylar Croy from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty joins me on the program. Skylar, these are the lawyers. Surely they know the law, right?
Oh, Vicki, you couldn't have set me up any better here. So let me just start with the backstory. Well, it was perfect. So the very first point I was going to make is that the American Bar Association gets about $43 million a year in federal grants. Okay? And about half of that comes from USAID, so USAID. And a lot of that is going to Ukraine, of all places, for various equity-related projects that the ABA thinks is important. And the ABA actually just issued a statement yesterday, probably because we had filed a complaint yesterday, that it's all upset about the fact that there's a new sheriff in town that might cut off its free ride, because the ABA in its current form is not going to continue to exist if the Trump administration actually cracks down on some of this stuff. So our complaint yesterday was a very straightforward Title VII complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission about several programs that the ABA runs, including one that, just by way of example, uses race and sex in placing law students into clerkship positions, which are kind of like internships with business court judges across the nation. So not only is the ABA violating employment law and basic civil rights law such as 1981, but it's even dragging in state court judges as into its conspiracy to violate federal law.
So it's obvious you can't discriminate based on race and sex. Wait a minute. This is like stuff we've known for decades. You can't discriminate based on sex. Wisconsin law says you can't do it. Federal law says you can't do it. The lawyers would be the ones taking the cases for anybody who has a complaint that they were discriminated against based on race or sex. And here are the lawyers discriminating against people based on race or sex for opportunities. And correct me if I'm wrong, but clerkships are good things to get, right? These are things that law students want because they pad the resume nicely. They give you good experience. And you're saying, sorry, white guys, not going to be your opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, they're great opportunities, and they have the potential to, after law school, lead to full-time employment. And they're the kind of thing that could be life-changing for the right person. So absolutely, Vicki.
Okay, so I want to just be clear. There are clerkships. It sounds kind of, I don't know, not that impressive, but it's a big deal. Clerkships are a big deal. Judicial intern opportunities, big deal. Judicial clerkship program, big deal. Tell me about Ukraine. What in the heck is the American Bar Association doing, sending money, and why does it even have money from us? Why aren't you lawyers kicking in? It's not like you guys have low salaries. Why aren't you kicking in for this? But why is Ukraine receiving money through the American Bar Association? It seems to be a laundering thing to me. You run it through the American Bar Association. They run it into some kind of equity program in Ukraine. Huh?
Yeah, so I wish I knew more, Vicki. So if anyone wants to check this, it's actually really easy to do. You go to usaspending.gov and you can just type in any entity you want, and it pops up and tells you whether they're receiving federal grants, but it doesn't give you a ton of information on those specific grants. So you can click into the American Bar Association and see they're getting $43 million, and you can see that some of it's going to Ukraine and some of it's apparently related to various equity projects. But there's not actually a great description of it, which obviously leads to the exact kind of allegations that you just raised about, well, where the heck is this money going and what the heck's going on with it? And I think Doge and Trump really need to be looking at this specifically and trying to figure out where these, not just with the ABA, but more generally, how is some of this grant money being spent? Because $43 million is a hell of a lot for an entity like the ABA to be receiving.
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm not sure what the amount of money to the ABA over time is. It's the American Bar Association. Again, is it a private organization? It's technically a private organization. It's an association that, as far as I understand, is it compulsory for lawyers to be members of this organization? In which case, how could it possibly then be a private organization?
So it is a private organization, but because it's receiving federal funding, especially because of the large amount that it's receiving, it does have special obligations under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which is basically just says that if you're receiving federal funding, you also have to comply with equal protection under the law. And because it's an employer, and it's again a very large employer, it's also subject to Title VII, which is just the basic part of the Civil Rights Act that every employer ought to know, that says if you're hiring, firing, advertising jobs, etc., based on race or sex, you're going to get slammed. It's not. People sometimes think that like I'm smart for putting this stuff together. I'm really not. This is not complicated stuff. This is stuff
they know
that
it. They're lawyers. They're lawyers. They know it. They just don't care. They don't. Now at this point, the lawyers are activists. Not all of them, but the lawyers have become activists and don't care what the law says. Why does it exist? Why does the American Bar Association exist?
Well, so it came about in the early 1900s, supposedly as a way to professionalize the legal profession, but it appears to me as an outsider looking in that over time it's become really just a left-wing political establishment that
NGO.
is like any other. Yep, it's like any other special interest organization. It's just sitting here mooching off the taxpayers for $40 million a year, and it's made some extraordinarily dumb statements in the past couple weeks. I'm not sure if you saw it, but towards the end of Joe Biden's administration, he just declared that the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution had been ratified. That was a lie, and he knew better. Joe Biden's got legal training, or at least
he cheated off his classmates. He copied his classmates' paper.
You said it, not me.
I did.
So he's, at least in theory, got legal training. He's just going around declaring that stuff. And I was very disappointed to see the ABA come out and just say, yeah, Joe Biden's correct. That's
Make
great.
a pronouncement. A constitutional amendment that's never been ratified. We'll just pronounce it. We will just, like God, speak it into existence. And then the ABA puts out a press release, and all of a sudden that's now in existence. But here's the thing. Back to the point of this organization. This organization does exist as a left-wing NGO. It actively engages in politics. It gets taxpayer money. It actively engages in politics. And then it does stuff like make pronouncements that are not true about the law. And then all the other lawyers, because the ABA said it, not the law said it, but the ABA said it, they're like, well, the ABA said it. And you would see, had nothing happened, nobody wanted to fight back against this, we'd be seeing attorneys for school districts. We'd see corp councils for cities and counties. We'd see all of these lawyers acting like the Equal Rights Amendment was ratified, Skylar, and you know it, because that has now been, for the last 10 years, the way the progressive movement operates within the law, within the legal profession, I should say.
Yeah, and there's such hypocrisy with it. I'm not even sure what the equivalent of a right-wing pronouncement along those lines would be, but if Donald Trump just tried to unilaterally declare that some amendment had passed that hadn't actually passed, there'd be just absolute uproar.
Oh, yes. Term limits. There's one. Balanced budget amendment. There's another one. I mean, if Trump says, you know what? Well, the balanced budget amendment is passed. Therefore, we have to have a balanced budget. I think we should anyway. But the balanced budget amendment hasn't passed. Or term limits have passed. Therefore, all of you people can't run for office again. People laugh at him, right? The ABA wouldn't be putting out a statement saying, well, there we are, guys. It's just, look, this is just dumb. I mean, I think that what has happened here is that politics has made lawyers really dumb. Schuyler, because or so arrogant that they never thought they'd actually have to contend with a challenge from their own people, like Will.
Well, and I do want to touch on the politics, too, just to make sure that everyone fully understands just how powerful the ABA really is. So, at least traditionally, the ABA has ranked and judged federal judicial nominees. It gives them basically like a letter grade. And at one point in time, that was actually taken very seriously. If you were a federal judicial nominee and the ABA said that you were unqualified, that was kind of a death sentence for your potential chance at becoming a federal judge. I think one thing the ABA is doing that it may not fully appreciate or realize, but it's really squandering that credibility that it at one point had. At this point, if I were a U.S. senator, I'd be more likely to vote for someone they said was unqualified.
I would too.
I don't want the person the ABA thinks is qualified. If they think that they can just go around and unilaterally pronounce constitutional amendments, that's not the kind of judge I want, and that's not the kind of organization I want judging my judges.
I don't want an organization that takes that is a laundering operation for a CIA cutout, funneling money to destabilize culture in foreign nations and spending the rest of it on left-wing politics. That's just me. So I hope that anyone who tweets, whether it's you or Dan Lennington or anybody from Will who's out there tweeting about this particular complaint that you have filed at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, please tag Doge, because it'd be really easy to zero out $43 million. The organization at this point is practically useless. So just tag Doge or tag Elon Musk. Schuyler, I've no doubt you're going to be successful on this one. Thank you for coming on the show today.